back to another episode of Industry Champions. I'm Steve Strum. I have the pleasure of sitting down today and spending a few minutes with Jennifer Otero
Yes.
from Andromeda Systems Incorporated.
Yes.
We got a lot of stuff to talk about.
We do.
We do.
We do.
So let's start off with Andromeda Systems Incorporated. This is your company. You are
I am one of the owners.
Madam President.
I'm one of the owners.
And what is this company? What do you guys do?
So we're a technical solutions provider that works with asset owners to optimize the maintenance, reduce life cycle cost, and at the end of the day, provide strong reliability, maintainability, and supportability of that asset. So when I talk about assets, I'm talking everything from aircraft to towboats to fire engines. So just imagine an asset owner of aircraft, right? How do you optimize maintenance, reduce life cycle cost, and bring the best forward as far as readiness? So we work with all asset owners on those principles. Things that we do are we identify areas of improvement. We have a suite of products, software, that can help you with supply chain optimization. We can reduce life cycle cost. We can find areas of improvement. We can use large sets of data. We can use our software products to provide solutions faster, get those abilities to those asset owners to make decisions quicker. In a defense industry capability, that is extremely important, right? You want an asset owner, be it F-18, be it an F-35, be able to make a decision on maintenance quickly so that we are ready for whatever challenges the United States.
Is it just defense industry, or do you also do private industry as well?
We do private industry as well. We're primarily defense, but we have grown in the commercial side as well.
Since I have, my F-18 parked out back, no big deal, right? So for people that are watching this going, what did she just say?
Yeah.
So if let's use a commercial airliner,
Yes.
because everybody's flown on a plane.
Yeah.
One, you don't want the plane falling out of the sky.
Correct.
We're going to call that bad. That's definitely on the good and bad scale is bad. But then also by optimization, using something that's very relevant considering fuel costs, right? Always kind of like that bounce and bubble, and right now they're a little higher due to some geopolitical stuff.
Correct.
So you help that airline industry obviously optimize safety so that the plane takes off and returns, that's the big goal. But then also inside of that travel, making sure that fuel efficiency, so that my ticket prices aren't skyrocketing, and making sure that you get the planes not just from point A to point B, but in the most efficient manner possible so they can last longer, be more dependable, and then as a consumer that buys a plane ticket, that's going to reflect in my ticket price.
Correct.
Something like that, yeah?
Correct. Well, and let me break it down. See, maintenance, okay? How often have we been at an airport and delayed because of maintenance, right? Well, think about this in a defense industry perspective. We need as many jets available at all times possible, but not every jet is in the same theater, right? So we've got some jets sitting on the runway, some jets flying over different countries, some jets in very combat situations. Not every jet needs the same maintenance. Not every plane sitting on the tarmac when we go to get on it needs the same maintenance. So why not establish criteria for maintenance based on reality, real data for that plane?
And it's a very complicated organism. I mean, we're not just talking about the oil filter here.
No, we're talking about...
Which I can't even find in my car anymore.
Right. Where they are parked every day. They could be in Utah. They could be on the East Coast, different environments. They could be near salt, different environment. So taking that data and for each aircraft or a fleet of aircraft or a fleet of assets, determining what is the right series of maintenance, even down to the specific aircraft, because not every aircraft is the same.
And it wasn't just aircraft. You talk about fire engines, and these are
towboats.
all these are things that you and I see every day. We don't really. You might have a different opinion, but like I see a fire engine just driving down the road. I really don't think about the fact that it's carrying 20,000 tons of water just rolling down the road, and I got to pull over so it can go and the tolerances on these things, like from a technical perspective, they're got to be very tight.
They are, and you can apply those same things to all those big, large tractors, right? Large towboats. So everything that we do is maintained a certain way, but what if we could improve that? What if you didn't necessarily have to take your car in every 5,000 miles? Because Maybe you only drive it a few miles at a time. Maybe it's a straight shot every time. Maybe you drive a certain way that doesn't, create certain things in that environment. If you take all that into consideration, you can right size the maintenance, right size the supportability, create reliability, and save costs.
And if you're talking about from a defense product standpoint, or municipalities, fire engines,
Correct.
or the commercial side, and even if you're like at a 1%, right? 1% is millions of dollars.
And time,
Yeah.
right? So the goal on the defense side is everybody needs to be ready.
Yep.
Well, if you've got a bunch of planes sitting at the flight line or leading into a depot to get maintained, they're not flying.
Right.
Well, maybe they're there just because some strict requirement says, hey, it is time. It's 30 days. They need to go in. But maybe that plane hasn't seen the same environment as another one. It does not need to go in, and that plane could be flying.
So what are some of the challenges that you see in your industry?
So challenges we see is obviously we have to consistently be current technologically, right? So technology is changing by the minute. Mm-hmm. We've got artificial intelligence. We've got the change in the role, right? So a lot of things that software developers used to do or do are now moving over into the artificial intelligence, staying current, moving faster. And then on top of that, a lot changed during COVID, right? How does a business work with their employees? The changing environment of the employee-employer relationship. More employees are expecting companies to pour into their employees more. How do you do that as a company, right? Because again, companies have bottom lines as well. So you've got to stay technologically advanced. You've got to support your employees. You've got to increase margin. And oh, by the way, you've got to be cutting edge and constantly shifting and pivoting and market expanding. So I think that a lot of companies that maybe found one path to success are realizing that that is not sustainable, that they've got to keep pivoting.
And you're doing all that live.
We are.
Right.
We are.
Yeah, so you're like working on the plane as it's going down the runway,
Yeah.
metaphorically speaking. And,
Correct.
and I know something that you and I were talking about, a little bit about your experience as a female executive in this world, heavily male dominated.
Correct.
So part of something else that you do as a human, right? So we've got the business tracking, challenges tracking, how you're keeping up with all the ever-changing universes, and then as a female executive in a heavily male-dominated space, you're also somehow have time to help other women that are aspiring to go down the road have the pathway to where there's a certain level of equality in the boardroom. Correct. Talk to us a little bit about that as the person that sits here and what your experience has been in that environment, but then also what you're doing to help other women succeed in executive positions that historically have been male dominated.
Yeah, I will definitely talk about that. I think there's a misconception that you cannot have a family, a career, your own personal self, and be successful at all three. It is definitely an ebb and flow, okay? Everything's not gonna be 100% at the same time. That's not physically possible. It's not mathematically available. However, throughout the period of your life, you can have a career, a very successful career, a career that grows to executive level if you choose so, and have a family and have self-time and self-care. And I've worked very hard at that. I've not always been 100% successful, but what I've realized, it's not about a 6-month or a 12-month or a 24-month. It is over a series of years. How have I balanced that? There's going to be times in life running a company from 25 or 30 people when I joined to over 500 now that you've got to be all in, right? Mm-hmm. And you have that talk with your family and say, at this period, I am all in at this, for the company. I've got to take some time and we've got to focus. But then when you take that time and be with that family, be present. And also, the biggest thing that I think people often do is they balance the family and the work and not themselves. And what I've realized over the last couple of years, very specifically, was I need to take that time to do my runs in the morning, spend 15 minutes doing calisthenics, go to the gym and weight lift, because those few minutes, 15 to 30 or 45 minutes, is going to set me up for success for the family and for the company. If you're not at your peak condition, mentally and physically, and I believe those two are intertwined, you're not going to be there for your family. You're not going to be there for the company. And you've got to, I think women tend to try to take on everything at the same time. I know I used to do that. I've learned that there is an ebb and flow. Communication is a must. You've got to be able to communicate to your company. You've got to be able to communicate to your family. I'm very clear. There are weeks where I will walk in on a Monday and say, this is my week that I'm all in here. I'm going to pull some long hours. We're going to get stuff done. I go home and I said, this is a long week for my office. We've got to focus. Husband, I need you to help me here. And we're very in lockstep. It's just something you got to do, but you can have it all. It's just, timing.
Well, one of the things that I very much appreciate on that is one of my partners, my wife owns a company, I get it. One of my very dear friends, who's one of the partners of our firm, is one of the first females to balance, said family and executive. And so it's definitely something that is, the tides are changing, so to speak, but yet it definitely becomes almost a subconscious bias to where if you are having a family, well, clearly you can't be a CEO.
Yeah.
You stand here to say, well, no, actually, it's not one or the other. You can actually have both.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, the fellas of the room, we got to pick up some of the slack when boss lady's got to go be boss lady. So.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a really interesting story. I think I held myself back more than the people beyond me. I was 8 months pregnant with my third child, and I felt this overwhelming need, not sure what was going on with my body, felt this overwhelming need to grow wings. And at 8 months, I went to an interview. I was leaving the government, and I didn't want to leave the government. I didn't even know I wanted to leave the government. I did an interview, 8 months pregnant. All men interviewed me, and I left, and I thought, there's no way they're going to offer this position to me. I'm 8 months pregnant. I couldn't even get home before they called and offered me the position.
There you go.
So I had held myself back. So then speed forward, I start the position, and I was very honest with them, like, you do understand I'm 8 months pregnant? You do understand that I'm going to take leave? Of course we understand. You're the candidate we want. We understand that, and we're here to support you. If I had never gone to the interview because I was worried about the fact that I was with child, I would have held myself back, not them.
And we may not even be here right now.
Correct. And that was so pivotal for me as a female who now is an executive to remind myself they weren't holding me back, I was holding me back. And I kind of use that as an example to myself whenever I start to hold myself back.
Wonderful. I really appreciate that. I can go on and on and on about that topic.
Yeah.
As I had mentioned, we support organizations like the Plan Like a Girl, Lead Like a Girl Foundation, and to see somebody who's actually a manifestation of all the work that our firm does to make sure that regardless of gender, race, religion, sex, ethnicity, all those things, that everybody gets an equal shot. And here you are, not just having your equal shot, but now you're demonstrating to other women watching the show what's possible, so long as the person looking in the mirror, right, that person can be the worst critic, is not going to hold you back. So thank you for spending time talking about your company and talking about your passion. I really do appreciate that.
Thank you.
As great as you are, which is you awesome, we don't do any of this on these guys over here.
Yes.
Guys, what we're going to do is we're going to put some of Jennifer's stuff and Andromeda Systems Incorporated on our website, which is thedailynewsnetwork.com. Really cool to see somebody who's stepping up, being a mom, being a leader. What a great episode. If you like this episode, share this episode. Come check us out on thedailynewsnetwork.com. Remember to always live with gratitude.